Welcome learners. Now in this session we would be discussing about process of management. You must have gone through all the elements of strategy, the strategic planning, the core vision, mission and objectives of the organization. All these things you must have gone through in earlier sessions, and in this sessions we would be concentrating on the process of management, and in the later session we would be concentrating on the core competency and the capacity building part. But when we discuss the process of management, before that you must have studied the elements of strategy. And when we talk about the different elements of strategy, there is a concept called strategic planning, which forms the it's kind of a backbone of the whole management system. And in the process of management also we would be discussing planning at a broader level, and then we will try to analyze that what are the different functional areas or the functions of management which help to define the whole process as such. So when we talk about process of management, we need to understand the basic definition of what is a process, because we always come across the conversations with each other and we just try to find out, and if we are talking about some particular thing, we always say, what is the process of this particular thing? So we need to understand what is a process, because in common conversation we use this word quite often. So when we talk about what is a process, we always say that it is a series of actions, one by one, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and then that leads to the end part, or that leads to the goal for which that process is carried out, or those series of actions have been carried out. So it is a series of actions which are carried out to reach to an end or to a particular goal, which usually is predetermined in nature. So in process of management, the managers, they try to perform certain activities which are interrelated in nature and which are targeted to achieve the desired goals of an organization. And this process of management is applicable starting from the household to the corporate houses and all sets of organization, whether they are profit-making organization, not-for-profit making organization, the service organization, any kind of organization, this process of management is applicable in each and every part of the life structure we follow. So it is a set of certain elements or functions which play an important role to define the whole process. These functions, they may vary as per the needs of the organization, and that is very, very important to understand that each organization, when we talk about the organization culture, there are many courses which talk about the organization culture, and we will not discuss or we will not go into detail of the organization culture, but on a brief note we'll just say that every organization possesses a specific kind of a culture. Every organization is different in nature. Every organization has its own set values. Every organization tries to perform as per its own capacity, but the whole concept of the process of management, that remains the same, and that is common to all. Only thing is the degree varies how it has been performed. So when we come to the process of management and we talk about management as a process, we now know what is a process. When we talk about management as a process, we need to understand certain statements. When we look around, we tend to say that for a house, we tend to say that this is a well-managed house, or this is a mismanaged house, or this house has not been managed so well. Similarly for organizations, this organization is performing quite well, or this organization is not performing so well. What do these statements mean? They are just statements. We just tend to express our views regarding a particular space. We are just trying to find out why this is happening. So this actually means that management is a kind of work or set of activities which defines that particular statement, whether it is good or bad, whether it is done performing in a proper manner or not performing in a proper manner. So we need to understand this. So when we talk about management as a process, management is a kind of work or set of activities, and the performance of activities may vary from organization to organization, as I have discussed it earlier. Now, what happens is there are different views on process of management, because what we will be talking about, we'll be taking the gist of all the views or the common views, and then we are going to use one particular set or one particular idea to describe the process of management. Now, there are management thinkers across the globe who have different views related to the management process, and we'll discuss some of them, some of the major ones. And this is very, very important, because each one of them, whatever we are discussing here, each one of them have described the process in their own way, in their own perception, and the experiments or the researches or the studies they have done for that particular organization. So it is not a uniform concept. So we just say that these are the components which are needed for the process of management. Now, when we talk about Newman and Summer, they have considered only 4 elements in management process, and these are organizing, planning, leading, and controlling. Now, this is as per Newman and Summer, as per their perception. Now, if we talk about Henry Fayol, he's one of the major management thinkers, and is given 14 principles also. And he talks about 5 functions of management, and they are planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling. So it is again as per their own views, as per their own perception, which they are doing it. Now, when we talk about Luther Gulick, now he has categorized management functions into 7 steps. Some have done it for 4, some have done it for 5, now it's 7 steps. So the range is from 4 to 7 elements or 7 functions. So when he has described the 7 steps, he has given an acronym, POTSCORP, and it's quite a popular acronym for principles of management, which stands for planning, P for planning, O for organizing, S for staffing, D for directing, O for coordinating, and R for reporting, and B for budgeting. So he has tried to incorporate all the functional areas which are required for the process of management. When we talk about Warren Hines and Joseph Macy, they have classified the management process into decision making, organizing, staffing, planning, controlling, communicating, and directing. When we talk about Coons and O'Donnell, who are the major thinkers for principles of management, and they have defined management in a systemic approach. So they have categorized the process into planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So when we are taking the combination of all these views, the best possible view on process of management is this, and this is the combination of all the views which the thinkers, it is an amalgamation of all the views which different thinkers have done. And in this I have used the 5 elements, the 5 major elements which are related in one way or the other. So when we talk about the process of management, the combination includes planning, organizing, directing or delegating, coordinating, and controlling. Now we will discuss each element or each function individually. So when we talk about the planning part, this is actually an essence of management planning, and you've already studied the strategic planning part. Now, it is actually done considering all the functions of the organization with the purpose for which it has been set up. It is essential for each function, which includes the formulation of various policies to regulate all the functions of the organization. So when we talk about planning, it is futuristic in nature. We try to describe what will be done, when it will be done, and how it will be done. Now suppose we take an NGO. Now in NGO, it is a budding NGO. So the planning can be short term, planning can be long term. So that is why we call it as strategic planning in elements of strategy. So if it is a strategic planning for the short term, it may be for the 6 months, and if it is to 1 year, and if it is the long term planning, then it can increase from 1 to 5 years. So we need to plan in a manner that how the organization is going to attain funds, recruit people, perform the services which it is meant for. So it is what, why, how and when. So that is the crux of the whole planning, and it forms the basis of the process of management. So that is very important to understand, that it is essential for each of the functional areas, each of the elements, and it interrelates each element of the process of management. That is what is planning. So if an NGO deals with different kinds of activities, some NGO deal with health, some NGOs deal with education, some deal with advocacy, some deal with environmental issues. But apart from the main activities these are associated with, there are certain functional activities like sales and marketing. For example, some NGO is working for education. Now in that case, they might be selling some kind of products made by the children of that NGO, like t-shirts, like these are the promotional materials, and they are being sold for a cost, like hats, mugs, then cushions, any kind of thing. So these will involve the sales and marketing part. Then of course the materials procurement is also there in planning activity, and if you see, we'll just move to the other elements and you'll find that all these elements are a part of each functional area, which we'll be discussing later. So materials procurement, then human resource planning, finance, etc. Everything requires planning and coordination. So you see, they are interrelated to each other. Each and every activity of an organization is interrelated, and no single activity works in isolation. So everything is interrelated. So when we talk about the planning in other part, it is done keeping in view the organizational objective. That is the most important part, that the goal has to be kept in mind. What are the objectives, how the objectives would be achieved, the NGO, the mission of the NGO, the organizational plan, and the policies of the organizations, and everything is interrelated. Now this is the first part which I discussed just now, is strategic planning. Now let us take an example. The planning for materials. Now this requires interrelation with the production plan and the ready available stocks, the pending orders position, the lead time from order to receipts, the procurement policy for materials, etc. So it is very, very important to understand this concept. Now coming to other part. So planning for delivering the services, this requires assessment of internal and external variables. Now, internal variables are used for planning the services, what kind of services are to be provided, how they are to be provided, when they are to be provided, to whom they are to be provided, what would be the time limit for providing those services, etc. The capacity of the organization, the quality of the services being provided with the present technology available. Now again, here the technology comes into picture. Because when we are planning, we cannot isolate technology. In the conventional methods, things were a little different, but now one has to adapt to the technological changes too, to decide what is going to happen in future. To assess, not to decide, to assess what is going to happen in future. So there are external variables also, like demand of services. There are people who want the services of a particular NGO to help a particular community. So these kind of things, they occur under the concept of planning. So there are other cases like for funds requirement, the planning depends on the funds required for working capital, the projects under implementation, the payment of interest on loans, repayment of loans, the payments to suppliers and contractors, the receipts from the customers against sales and services provided on credit, the financing policy for the projects, the dividend payments, the internal generation of resources, etc. Everything is involved in planning, and this is the financial aspect. Now the finance functional area is in the picture here, like the production functional area was in the, or operations area was in the earlier example. So there are all the functional areas which are included in planning. So planning is futuristic in nature and it helps the organization to achieve its objectives. Now coming to the second part of the process of management, which is and how the organizing is done. So we'll take the planning is to be done on the organizational objective, vision, mission and policies for the manpower, sales, procurement of materials, financing, payment and realizations, etc. But it has to basically align with the targets. And these targets become the management tools to measure the actual performance of the individual activities and take corrective measures if required. Now again, in this case, the organizational objective comes into picture. So that is how the organizing comes as a second element or second function of the process of management. So when we talk about organizing as the management function, it is associated with the effective utilization of resources. Resources can be in form of men, money, labor, machines. Now these are the major things and materials, of course. So for achieving the objectives of the organization, that is the crux of the whole story. So organizing is associated with the total functioning of the organization for performing effectively, and it involves two activities basically. First is the alignment of resources, and this again includes the planning part. The second part is the optimal utilization. Amongst the things available in the organization or for the NGO, how one can optimize or maximize the use of resources, giving the maximum productivity. So optimal resources, but the productivity should be maximum. So how efficiently it can be used, that is done through organizing. So when we talk about organizing, there are different types of organizing. One is the formal organizing and the other is the informal organizing. The formal organizing is the distribution of the resources into various functional areas and which delegates the responsibility effectively. We'll be talking about delegation later. Informal organizing is the management function which is associated with the behavioral perceptions, the attitudes and the motivation of the employees, which is a part of directing and delegation also. So this involves the leadership role in the organizing part. So when we talk about formal and informal organization, we need to understand another concept, which is the sub-functions of organizing. So what are the sub-functions of organizing? These are the sub-functions and they are self-explanatory in nature. The first one is we need to identify the activities which needs organizing. So as per planning, the activities have been charted out, and these activities, what is to be performed, that is the what part. So this activity is the what part. Now then in organizing, we need to group the activities, which activity will come under which functional area, and then after that based on the activities, the work is being delegated by the leaders to different people or different individuals in the organization, and this can be done in different structural format, which we'll be discussing later in this session itself. Then delegation of authority also. To look after, to monitor the whole activity, it is important to have a divisional or the sectional leader associated with the particular activity. And the last part would be the coordination. Coordination amongst all, that is important in nature. So this is where the structure of organization comes into picture. So these are some of the organizational structures which are available, and the first one is the functional structure, the second one is the divisional structure, the third one is the matrix structure, and the fourth one is the team structure, and fifth one is the network structure. Now, based on the organizational requirement, the structure may vary. Some organizations may have the combination of structures, and some organizations may have specific structures. Now, if we talk about the functional structure, usually this structure is already available in the organization because the activities are based on the functional areas like finance, operations, HR, marketing, whatever the activities. Based on that, the delegation of employees is done and the authorities are given to them. So this can be usually this is a common structure, but there is a divisional structure also. Based in the functional areas also there are divisions. Some may be looking after the budgeting part, some may be looking after the accounts part, some may be looking after the salary division. So there are divisional structures also. So in a big organization or a larger organization, this kind of structure can be available in combination with the functional area. There is a matrix structure also where two combinations are done. So it may be a matrix of divisional and functional, it may be a matrix of team and network, or whatever the case may be as per the requirement of the organization. The team structure, usually in NGOs this is quite a popular format because there you require a lot of commitment, there you require a lot of teamwork. So in team structure, a team is formed to perform a specific group of activities. A specific activity is targeted towards a specific goal. So for that you require a team. So in that case the team structure prevails. When it is a network structure, in network structure, the networking is done between different functional areas within the internal format of the organization as well as with the external format of the organization. And this kind of structure is also available specifically in NGOs because the NGOs, they have to deal with the outside organization. So this is the structure of organization and how it relates to the organizing of activities. This is what is discussed in this particular part. Now coming to the delegating or the directing part, this can be done in the combination. So many thinkers, they have given delegation as separately and directing as separately, and they have also included staffing in it. So staffing, delegating and directing. So this is whole sequence. So we'll be discussing this in combination with each other, that is delegating and directing. Now in this case, the basic idea is about the role of the leader or role of the authority. It may be the authority, the leader of the whole organization who has delegated the responsibility at the divisional levels or the functional levels, or to a particular team. There might be a group leader also. So it depends on the leading authority and how the leading authority tackles with the employees of the organization. So the leading in delegating and directing, we consider leading the employees to perform efficiently and effectively to achieve certain objectives which are predetermined in nature, and they motivate the employees to contribute to their optimum level and give the best of their own capacity. The explanation of jobs assigned to subordinates, this is very important aspect because a leader needs to explain what kind of a job has to be performed by an individual in the organization or in that particular functional area or in that division. Because if the explanation is not proper, the communication is not proper, then it becomes very difficult for the individual to perform a particular kind of a job. And of course, providing guidance. There are times when the individuals or the employees, they get stuck. So in that case, it is important for the organizer, for the leader to provide guidance. It's kind of mentoring, role of mentor. So this is very important in this case. So the function of directing thus involves the following sub-functions, and these sub-functions are communication, motivation, and leadership. So these functions which we have already discussed in this particular concept. So when we talk about communication, so proper communication flow from top to bottom and bottom to top should be there. The leadership should be in such a manner that it should motivate. Now you see, the leadership role has been taken at the end, because communication and motivation, they form a part of leadership. So it has to be effective enough for the employees to generate self-motivation in themselves so that they are committed towards a certain kind of a work. So that is why in NGOs, this is one of the most important part, because the NGOs, they are based on commitment. So that is why these are sub-functions which are important in delegating and directing the responsibilities to the individuals of the organization. Now coming to the another part, that is coordinating. Coordinating amongst each other, coordinating amongst the leaders and the individuals who are performing a particular kind of a job, coordination between the NGOs and the service providers, coordination between the NGOs and the stakeholders. Everything is involved in this process of management, or this element of process of management. So one needs to establish the relationship with various functional areas which are directed towards a common goal. The process of interlinking and binding all the organizational decisions like operations, the activities and efforts to achieve unity of action for the accomplishment of organizational objective, it becomes very necessary. When we talk about the sub-functions of coordination or coordinating, it involves the clear definition of authority or the responsibility relationships. That means each and every individual in the organization should know what is his or her responsibility. If they are not able to decipher what is their responsibility, it is very, very difficult for them to perform a specific kind of a job. Another case is unity of direction, unity of command. So unity of direction means that the individual should know in which direction he or she has to move. And when we talk about unity of command, that means there should be one leader who should command, who should take the role of directing the people involved in performing specific activity. And of course, effective communication and effective leadership, they again form a part of coordinating. And these are the common elements which happen or which occur in all the elements which are a part of process of management. Now the last part, which is the controlling part, this part is very, very important. Now in controlling the process, it's the process of ensuring that the performance of each section or division or functional area or an individual, the organization, it is consistent with the organizational objectives. It is moving in a flawless manner, but usually this does not happen because human beings tend to err. Human beings, they err at times. So it is natural in that case. So any kind of deviation or aberrations from the objectives and the plans of the organization, they need to be identified and investigated, and corrective measures should be taken. So this is very important, that the corrective measures should be taken. The third part is identification of deviation. So deviation needs to be identified and they act as a feedback for the employees and the authorities. The managers, they get the feedback that this aberration is there and that can be rectified, and later on a modified version of that performance can be done, which helps the organization to perform better. Now, when we talk about the sub-functions of controlling, this involves the measurement of performance against predetermined goals, identification of errors or the variations from these goals, and measurements to correct the errors. Now, this is very important because this is a part of monitoring also, and this gives the feedback also. So, when we talk about other organizations or the competitors in the same area, we find that the process of management of these 5 elements is different in nature, but this decides or this defines that how the organization is going to perform in the future, or how the organization is performing in the present times, and how the organization is able to handle the crisis situation and come out of it and perform in a better manner. So this is all about the process of management, and in the next session we would be discussing the core competency and capacity building and how it is related to the process of management. Thank you so much.